Welcome back. President Trump vowing no exemptions to the 25% steel and aluminum tariff, saying that more could be coming on those metals and on autos. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent joined me yesterday on this program, saying that the tariffs could ultimately stack up.
What's going to happen on April 2nd, each country will receive a number that we believe that represents their tariffs. So for some countries, it could be quite low. For some countries, it could be quite high. So there's not an automatic 25 plus 25 that's going to happen.
Are these stacked tariffs when it comes to aluminum and steel? In other words, if you've got 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel, and then you've got reciprocal tariffs coming, is that going to be stacked on top of the 25% aluminum and steel? I
will have a better sense as we get closer to April 2nd. Okay. They could be stacked, but look, a lot of countries don't produce steel or aluminum. And again, Maria, what I can tell you is going into April 2nd, some of our worst trading partners in terms of the way they treat us have already come to President Trump offering to substantial decreases.
Joining me now is White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. Kevin, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
I want to get your take on your priorities, Kevin, but earlier in the week you warned that there could be some uncertainty coming as related to the tariffs that are coming on April 2nd. What are you expecting in terms of this April 2nd reciprocal tariff deadline?
It was actually a little bit, for me, a classic example of mainstream media overreaction to simple statements. What happened was I was on a neighboring show, and I said that in April 2nd, the president's going to announce his tariffs, and between now and then, of course, you'll be uncertain about what's going to happen because he's going to tell you on April 2nd. We're very clear about that. And then there was a headline that all of a sudden, White House warns about heightened uncertainty, but it was just a statement that on April 2nd, we're going to reveal everything. And I can tell you that yesterday, Scott Bessent and Secretary Rutnick and I and a few others, we were in Howard's office working on this so that there's going to be a very, very clear, detailed, easy to understand plan for reciprocal tariffs that will be revealed to everybody on April 2nd. The other thing I can say is that what the Secretary of Treasury said is really true, that countries are coming to us and saying, hey, you know, we've been acting pretty rough on you guys, but let's concede this, let's concede that ahead of our announcement. And so there's really a lot of positive movement going on in trade right now.
Well, I mean, we should point out that it's really a small portion of the overall number of countries out there, right, that are actually seeing tariffs and are problematic in terms of tariffs, which need a reciprocal tariff, right? What is it, like 15 or 15%? It's a small portion of overall countries, not every country.
Right. Well, there are more than 100 countries that don't really have any tariffs on us and don't have any non-tariff barriers, and there are probably about 10 to 15 countries that account for the entire $1 trillion trade deficit, and they have both non-tariff barriers and big tariffs. And so what we're doing in a very analytical way is we're studying that, but we're also, Maria, studying everything else we could do to make this economy sing again. And you can already see in the data that things are really lifting off. I don't know if you had time to cover yesterday the industrial production numbers. It's a highly cyclical indicator, and industrial production, we got the numbers yesterday, has just increased in February by the most that we've seen. In fact, it's the highest industrial production number in recorded history. And one of the main reasons is that there was an 8.5% monthly increase, not at an annual rate, monthly increase in automobile production. All of that production is coming home because of the trade positioning that we're taking, and also because we've got big tax cuts coming, which are going to reward domestic production and domestic workers. And so we're very, very bullish on the economy, despite some of the chattering you're seeing about the uncertainties.
Right. And you know, you say one thing, there has been this incredible overreaction that whatever you say is going to be ending up in a headline. So it happened yesterday with the Treasury Secretary when I spoke with Scott Bessent. He had to clarify recent comments about, you know, a reporter asked him, will you guarantee that we will not have a recession? And I said, look, I mean, you want a guarantee now. Here's what he told me yesterday. Watch.
It was a silly question. Can you guarantee there's not going to be a recession? I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee that the journalist who asked me the question that her news program is going to be on in a year. But what I can guarantee you is that there is no reason we need to have a recession. The economy in the first quarter is doing better than the media is reporting. Could we have a pause as we go from this incredible level of government spending, which is just unsustainable? You know, I said on the show, what I could guarantee was if we had kept going the way we were, we would have been in a financial crisis. And President Trump has put the brakes on this.
Yeah, especially with $36 trillion in debt. Kevin, give us your assessment of the macro story right now. And what are you looking at?
Right.
You just said industrial production. What other metrics do you look at, Kevin?
Right. Right. You know, in fact, I'm glad you asked that, because watching all the GDP nows, and, you know, they had a negative number because of the big trade deficit.
Exactly.
I went back and I used to work with your friend and my old friend, Alan Greenspan, and he had a really, really simple real-time GDP model that he used all the time. He called it hours to output. And what you do is you just look at the jobs report and see how many hours did people work, and then you look at the normal relationship in past quarters between hours and how much GDP you get, and then you could take the 2 months of jobs data we get and give you a GDP number. And I went and I re-estimated this week the old Greenspan hours to output model, and it gave us for the current quarter 2.5% GDP. And so, you know, is it possible that things are going to be rougher than that in the first quarter? Of course, because the data move around. But Alan Greenspan's favorite model back when I was a kid in the 20s, working in my 20s, working at the Fed, it's saying about 2.5, and I think that's about the right answer right now. And so I think that, and if you look at all the auto production and industrial production, you know, Maria, you and I have also been working on TV together for 20 years.
Yeah.
If we have a recession, one of the first things that goes down is industrial production, right? And capital spending. Capital spending is booming. Industrial production is booming. Housing, we saw yesterday, is booming because mortgage rates are down a whole percentage point because of the Doge savings and the way that's affecting long-term interest rates. And so there's a lot of positive news in the economy right now, and everybody's focused on the potential harm from tariffs. But what I'm seeing is visible gain from the threat of tariffs because everybody's moving their auto production back to the U.S. And there's huge, huge capacity for that to go up. And I use the word capacity advisedly because the capacity utilization rate in autos is about 60% right now. When President Trump had a healthy economy last time, it was 80%. And now I think we're heading back there. I'll bet you by December, capacity utilization in the U.S. is back to 80%. And if we do that, we got to have a 3.5%, 4% growth this year.
Yeah, it's all really important metrics that you're looking at. You said mortgage rates are down, interest rates are down, oil prices are down, and I know President Trump wants them to go down further. But the consumer, people are questioning the consumer, and of course that has to do with inflation overall, even though you've got some things way down, like the price of eggs with the president's input there, as well as oil. How worried are you about the consumer and really getting inflation down at this point?
Well, what I did with my pencil, Maria, is we just took the consumer data that we have in hand and then estimated how much GDP growth goes up in the first quarter just because of the consumer. What's their contribution to growth? And it's positive 1%. And positive 1% is a little bit slower than what you usually see, but it's still a healthy enough number. And I think that the consumer got walloped by, you know, the fact that grocery prices went through the roof. Joe Biden killed hundreds of millions of chickens and the egg prices were crazy. I went to the grocery store and did some field work, which is actually the way my wife gets me to work on Saturdays, and like filled up all the grocery bag with groceries. And I've noticed a big decline in March of prices. And so I think you're going to see a lot of good news when we get the March data. But for the eggs that we buy every week, they went from about $9 for a dozen to $4.99 a dozen this Saturday. And I think a lot of people are feeling a lot better about their groceries given the policies that we pursued in the last couple months.
Well, look, we'll hear from the Fed today. We're not expecting any moves in interest rates, but what would you want to see the focus to be at the Fed right now?
Well, again, I think that the economy is doing well. I think that long-term interest rates are coming down, which is doing a lot of the hard work for the Fed for it. And I think that inflation has come down a lot. And so the question is then what's the normal rate of interest? And that's something that I think they should start to be talking about. Like, when are we actually done? I think they think that they're a little tighter than they would want to be in equilibrium right now. And my guess is that the conversation will be, well, how do we go from a little bit tighter than we need to be to cruise control? And my guess is that'll happen over the next few meetings.
Yeah, real quick on Doge, Kevin, a federal judge ruled yesterday that White House senior advisor Elon Musk likely acted unconstitutionally with his directive to dismantle USAID. We've talked about the ridiculous things that the money was going to, but Doge now blocked from making further cuts. Judge Theodore Chang, an another Obama appointee, ordering the Trump administration to restore email and computer access to all those placed on administrative leave, Kevin.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We're going to get the wasteful money back to the taxpayers. And I can tell you that one of the charges that I've got from the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader is to be the person that aggregates up all the stuff that Elon's doing, saves it, and then gives the real number to people in the House when they're voting on the reconciliation package so they can know what the true savings are. And I've been working with Elon's team to do that, and pretty much everything they've been saying in their website is true. There's a heck of a lot of savings out there.
Kevin, do you have confidence that the Congress will get the tax cuts extended this year?
Yes. Yeah, I'm at 99.9% that they will, yeah.
All right. Kevin Hassett, great to see you this morning, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
We'll see you soon. Kevin Hassett is at the White House.